good morning, guys. This week, for the week of April, the end of April to May, here are our objectives. So the first thing that we're doing is determining theme. Then we're going to analyze some complex characters. And then we're going to look at the structure of the text. The text that we are using to do this is the Landlady, okay? So I'm just going to go over a couple concepts that will help you get through the text. And then we're just going to ask a couple of questions about the actual text, okay? So here are some story elements review. When you are reading this text, you want to think about the plot. What are the events that happen in the story, okay? Think about the setting. Where does it take place? What is the time of day that it takes place? Then we have the characters. Now, in this text, there are two main characters. I want you to figure out who they are and how do they move the story along. Then, of course, with every character, there's different types of conflict, or with every text, there's different types of conflict. So you want to figure out what type of conflict is going on. Is it just one or is it multiple? Is there a main one? All right. And then, of course, we have theme, which is the message of the text. Okay. Now, here we have conflict. We went over this last week. There are several types of conflict. Remember, there's man versus self. So that's like an internal conflict. Okay. Man versus technology, nature, society, and then of course there's man versus man. So throughout your reading of the text, I want you to think about what is the main type of conflict. Is it the main character against somebody? Is it the main character against society as a whole, against nature, etc.? Now, here are the main devices that you guys are going to be looking at when you are reading these passages. Of course, we have foreshadowing, and I talked about that last week in last week's video, where I watch a show by the name of Empire. And at the beginning of each episode, they show a casket. Now, we don't know who's in that casket, but we do know something is going to happen. Something's about to go down. All right, somebody going to die. But we just don't know who. So that writer is using hints to tell us what will happen later. All right. Now, then we have irony, okay? And that is when something is expected, all right, but it's different from what actually happens. Okay? So in scary movies, we see like a beautiful house and the sun is shining, and then it ends up being haunted. And that's ironic because how can such a beautiful place have such or create such bad memories? Then we have tension, all right? Remember, that's that anxiety, fear, stress. That can be on the characters or that can be on the reader, okay? If the reader's on the edge of their seat, like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen, okay? Then that creates tension. Last week we talked about the show Money Heist, right? And how in that show it creates a lot of tension for the viewer because we don't know if they're going to get caught by the police. We don't know if the bomb is going to blow up. We have a little bit of anxiety. Okay. And then we have mood, and mood is how the reader feels about the subject. So what kind of mood does it create? Does it create a happy mood? Does it create an anxious mood? Does it create a creepy mood? All right. That's what I want you guys to think about. Okay. Of course, we have structure. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but keep in mind this plot diagram. Okay. You guys did a whole project on this last week, so you should be familiar with the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and of course the resolution, okay? If you're not, feel free to go back to this slide. Then we have characterization, all right? Now, the only difference from this week and last week is that we're zooming in on direct characterization, which is when the author tells you about a character. And then we have indirect characterization, which is when the author shows you the character's personality. You have to make an inference, okay? So as you can see, here for direct characterization, we have SpongeBob. And in the theme song, it says, absorbent and yellow and porous is he, SpongeBob SquarePants, right? Now, that is the author telling us exactly how SpongeBob looks. He's absorbent, he's yellow, etc. Then we have indirect characterization. We have Plankton. They don't necessarily say much about Plankton, but they show us through his actions. So when he is going to steal the Krabby Patty formula, we know that he's a thief. When he's talking to his computer, who's his wife, we know he's lonely because he had to make a device, a computer, be his wife. Wow, wow, wow. All right, now we're going to get into our text. This is the landlady. Now, when you look at this image, we have a woman, we have a man with tea. All right, I want you guys to think, is this positive? Do you think this story is going to be positive or is it going to be negative? Okay. All right, just based on the picture. All right, now as you read your text, you want to answer the guiding questions. There's only a couple there for you to answer, okay? You want to pay close attention to both characters. As you can see, we have this woman and this man. Those are our two main characters. You want to look for examples of foreshadowing. So when does the author give us a hint as to what's going to happen later? And then, of course, the dialogue, because the dialogue is key in this text. All right. What the landlady says is really going to affect how we view her and move the story along. All right. Now, when you're looking at the conflict, okay, I want you to think about the events that are presented throughout the story and what type of conflict do you think is occurring? Now, when I say conflict, I mean the main conflict, okay? For foreshadowing, remember, it's the writer's use of clues to hint at events that will happen later. Think about the details that are presented throughout the story and what can you infer might happen. Now, when you are reading your text, there are some questions that ask you to stop and think and make an inference. All right, so take those seriously because it will help you with your quiz later on. All right, and last we have the mood, okay? So the foreshadowing and the irony create the mood. The dialogue is what moves the plot and tells us about the characters, okay? So when you're thinking about mood, I want you to think about the details that are presented throughout the story, okay? What details are presented throughout the story that creates the mood? And remember, the mood is how the reader feels, okay? Now, based on that first image and based on this image, I want you to think about, would the mood be positive or negative? Then I want you to hone in on a specific word, all right? That's going to tell you what you think the mood will be. All right, so we will have our discussion. I will give points for that, and thank you very much. And I want you to have a great week. All right.